It's May 2nd, 2025. It's Talkin Giants, brought to you by SeatGeek. I am Justin Penik, and today I am joined by an Ole Miss reporter, Tyler Komis, who's been reporting on Ole Miss football for the last 3 years inside the Rebels and also 24/7 Sports with CBS. I feel like it's really important, and I'm not going to do this for all positions. I don't think it's necessary for all positions, but in particular for a guy that we're expecting to be, hopefully, the Giants franchise quarterback, finding out who they are as a person, how they are as a worker, how they've improved over the last 3 years, and a lot of the certain things that we've been talking about with Jaxson Dart over the last week, why we're a little bit excited. He has a fiery personality. I wanted to get more context around that, and I think Tyler did a nice job, nice lighthearted conversation on Jaxson Dart. So thank you, Tyler, for coming on, and fun little connection about Tyler Komis and I. We found this out after we were done recording. Went to college with his brother Brett, and I'm pretty sure Brett and I, we were in the same freshman dorm at St. Joe's University. So shout out to you, Brett, if you're listening to this. So yeah, it's been about 8 days since the Giants draft, or at least night 1 and night 2 kind of wrapped up. Excited about this Giants draft class. We're going to talk about it with some different guests as the summer rolls on, and we'll see where we go from Talkin Giants. But before we talk with Tyler, I got to talk to you about Huel. If you're constantly on the move or just tired of skipping meals, Huel has you covered. Spelled Huel, spelled. And their Black Edition ready to drink is a total game changer. It's a complete meal in one bottle with 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, high fiber and low sugar, so you feel full, focused, and ready for your day. And right now, new customers, you can get 50% off plus a free gift at Huel.com when you use our code Giants. Don't miss out. Try it today. My mornings are chaotic. I'm out the door in minutes and don't have time to whip up a balanced meal, which is where Huel Black Edition comes up clutch. It keeps me full, energized, and focused all day. Start saving time and money without compromising your nutrition today with this exclusive offer for new customers of 15% plus a free gift using our exclusive code GIANTS at Huel.com. That's 15% plus a free gift for new customers using our exclusive code GIANTS at Huel.com. Please see our description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition bottled. And here's Tyler Komis from Inside the Rebels. Welcome back to the show, and I want to welcome on good friend of mine. We recently just met because he sent me a DM, and it was a great DM. And then I sent him a DM being like, I should have you on. This is Tyler Komis, Giants fan, but also you've been covering Ole Miss football and baseball, Ole Miss athletics for the last 3 years. You're also the host of the Inside the Rebels podcast for 24/7 Sports, CBS. Tyler, welcome on the show. You've been going on some other NFL shows, and I know you went on a 49ers podcast. Some Ole Miss Rebels have been drafted. Good draft class for the Rebels, but we're going to talk some Jaxson Dart. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. First of all, thanks for having me on. Recent fan of the show as of last fall. Tough season, so 3-14, Eagles win a Super Bowl, Saquon, the whole bit, so I needed that. But yeah, really good draft class for Ole Miss. Obviously, one of their biggest pieces is headed to the team I got roots to.
Yep.
Me and you got roots to. So they had 8 players selected. It was the most in program history in the 7-round era. They had 9 in 1971 when Archie Manning was drafted. So it's been a while since they've had this amount of hype.
So you've been covering Ole Miss, like I said, for the last 3 years, right?
I'd consider 2021. Yeah, the football team since 21.
So you're watching Jaxson Dart this year, and you're watching Jaxson Dart basically kind of throughout his collegiate career. Do you think, as you're watching him this year, and especially you're obviously you're a Giants fan, maybe not thinking that you didn't know that Jaxson Dart was going to be the Giants quarterback. You're watching him this year. Do you think this is a quarterback that deserves to be taken in the first round? And do you think this is a guy that can be a franchise quarterback as you're watching him this year?
Considering the draft class and the position he plays, yes, I think he's worth a first-round pick, not 3rd overall, obviously, or the Giants would have taken him there, right? And I think he is a guy that can flourish into a franchise quarterback in the right situation. I'll be honest with you. I think the Rams probably would have been his best situation for him.
Yeah.
Just, Stafford, McVay, a lot of stability over there, right? But I do think him coming to the Giants when they have two veteran quarterbacks in front of him, a guy like Brian Dable, who's molded Josh Allen, right? Gets a lot of credit for that. So I think this was the next best situation for him and kind of fulfill the prophecy, right? 21 years ago, I think Ole Miss made a draft day trade for, a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback me and you grew up watching big time. So yeah, I think this is a situation where he can develop. It just has to
Yeah.
go according to plan, and that's the big thing.
Main reason why I want to have you on is like this is what I know. This is what I want to know about Jaxson Dart, and I feel like talking about quarterbacks, like who they are as people and who they are as workers, I feel like that's the most important position to actually know, because I feel like that's the position that you like. The guys that work hard, they have a better chance at getting somewhere at the pro level. So, who is Jaxson Dart as a person? Who is he as a dude? And then also, how is he kind of as a worker, as a quarterback? Because from first glance, watch the Gruden QB show. I like the fieriness. I like the competitiveness. I like what I've seen at first glance. But what have you seen over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think the Gruden show is a great example because I think he really pulled out a lot of a Jackson that's really him. I think he's not afraid to speak up. That's for sure. He's not afraid of standing in front of a room, firing the guys up, obviously, as we've seen. And I think the biggest personality trait that's really great about him is that he's coachable. Um, you know, and at Ole Miss, he was thrown some situations where, especially in this era of college football, I'm not sure how a lot of guys would respond. But first of all, never held the program hostage. And, before this season, he was never the unquestioned starter. He had a 2022 first year, he outdueled Luke Altmaier, the current quarterback at Illinois. And then the next year, Ole Miss started that first year with Jackson 7-0, faltered down the stretch, 5-1 finish, and they go out and get Oklahoma State veteran who started like 50 plus games, Spencer Sanders, and that really set Jackson off. He felt disrespected, and that the team didn't kind of, I guess, really fully believe in him because he wasn't named a starter till after week one of the 2023 season, a real breakout year for him. And I think that was a huge moment in his career, bringing in Sanders, having a guy right at his heels. I mean, we all projected Jackson to start because, I mean, it would have been crazy if he didn't. But I really think Sanders is a big role in pushing Jackson, and I think that situation kind of tells you a lot about him as far as keeping his head down, having a chip, playing with a chip on his shoulder. I mean, you kind of see that how he
Yeah.
doesn't slide and take care of his body right. But I think the biggest thing is this guy has the ability to got teammates to gravitate towards him, and he's coachable and cliche, but culture builder. I think because Ole Miss was in search of a new era after Matt Corral left, and he kind of filled the shoes. I mean, big shoes at the time. You can ask Ole Miss people, and he really exceeded expectations, and obviously became the program's all-time leading passer. So a lot of those intangibles that we hear about are just
Yeah, and
kind
I
of
and I can
true, I
imagine. I mean,
think.
you see so many times, and I don't know everything about transfer rules and NIL, but I just know it's a whole lot easier to transfer now. And then if somebody else comes in and if a school rubs you the wrong way, well, I have the leverage of I have talent and I can go somewhere else and they can pay me more, and I know I'm going to play right away. So that's really cool to hear how Dart kind of stuck it through. I think anybody can easily leave. Anybody with talent can easily go and get more money elsewhere to go and play. But he stuck it out, even though hey, he maybe wasn't happy with decisions or whoever they brought in, but he won the job. He earned it. He proved it. I love that. What ways has he kind of improved? Now he mentioned on the Gruden show that pre-snap reads is something that he feels like he's improved the most in throughout the years. But in your eyes, what are the ways in which Jaxson Dart has kind of progressed as a quarterback?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I think right off the bat, I'd take that as like predetermining stuff. And his first year, the biggest thing with him, in my opinion, were, and maybe it was the adjustment to the SEC, but the backbreaking turnovers late in games and, that kind of thing. And then you see in 2023, he really limited that and cut that down to 5 interceptions from 11 the previous year. So I think the biggest thing with him was taking care of the football and really making that a priority and much better decision maker. Just that kind of thing.
Now the phrase that I've heard a ton is fourth quarter collapses, fourth quarter collapses. And that's kind of been given as a little bit of a negative to Jaxson Dart. I mean, there's even some that's going back to 2022 and 2023. I know the Florida game is a game that's talked about a lot. So talk to me about Jaxson Dart and these quote unquote fourth quarter collapses.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I might have to dust off some cobwebs for 22, but 23 and 24 couldn't have been more different in those situations. And I feel like that's something that's not talked about. And it's what have you done for me lately league anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter too much. But in 23, I think Ole Miss was maybe 4-0 or something in one score games, and it featured three fourth quarter game winning drives from Dart. And it wasn't against, those non-conference teams or anything like that, as it should never be, but LSU, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. And that LSU and Texas A&M game, those were some of Jackson's most memorable moments as a Rebel, I'd say, especially in the fourth quarter. Obviously, 24 last fall, 0-3 in one score games, and cost them a playoffs team with a $20 million roster, pretty much. So yeah, and that Florida game was ugly. Let me rephrase that. The ending of it was ugly because really for 55 minutes he was in control and looked good. I mean, the offense wasn't doing exactly what it was supposed to as far as points on the board. It's tough. And I think Gruden really spotted it out perfectly. Plays a little emotionally, and it leads to things like that, trying to play hero ball, and it didn't work out in that situation. The fourth quarter collapses. I mean, I feel like, you got to go off 2024, but he's definitely been there and made game-winning drives when it mattered. I mean, I can't really stop talking about it, but the LSU, Jaden Daniels Dart game, that was really impressive to see because Ole Miss was down like 9 points going into the fourth quarter, 2 possessions against a really good LSU team. I thought
pivot
that year. So that one was impressive. Florida is a big stain, though.
I just remembered this, and Dart was even asked about it during his presser. Our old buddy Joe Judge, what is he doing? I'll tell you what. Anytime I see Lane Kiffin on the TV screen, Joe Judge is right behind him. So what is Joe Judge's role at Ole Miss? And even apparently he's been worked a lot with Jaxson Dart as they're on the sideline together. Jaxson Dart is crying in his lap sometimes. What's kind of Joe Judge's role and influence at Ole Miss, and what's he doing with Jaxson Dart?
Good question. That kind of slipped my head, and obviously he's been a big part. I'll tell you what he's not doing. He's not calling QB sneak on 3rd and 10.
No, Lane Kiffin's chucking it down 40 yards down the field. We know that.
Yeah, exactly. So Judge doesn't have to say there, but no, man, he's assistant, kind of an analyst kind of role with the quarterbacks, and the analyst role has kind of changed in college football. They can be much more hands-on than they used to be allowed to be. He really, I think Jaxson gives him a ton of credit in terms of preparation and trying to give him like that kind of pro style preparation. Really worked closely with the quarterbacks and receivers. So, Antoine Wells, Dart, and Judge kind of got that little connection going there, but huge on the tablets too, which kind of just came into play for college football last fall. And obviously that's a thing in the NFL. So that'll be a good adjustment for him. Transition from him at practicing it in last fall. But yeah, he's been huge.
Life is cyclical. Like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And what comes around goes around is like that. It's so damn funny. It's not just the Eli connection. It's, oh yeah, Joe Judge was like your quarterback's coach, which is crazy.
And Sanders, man, who was his coach? Pat Shurmur.
That also would have been like cyclical, and
yeah, it was gonna happen.
That was more obvious and talked about, and now it's like, oh, Jaxson Dart being a Giant snuck up on us, and it's like, oh yeah, there's this connection too. So yeah, speaking of the Lane Kiffin offense, hey, we're gonna truck the ball, we're gonna be aggressive, we're gonna throw the ball down the field, and I think that's kind of like what Brian Daboll, if you were to take anything from the Lane Kiffin offense, I think that's what Brian Daboll is attracted to when it comes to Jaxson Dart. But the Lane Kiffin offense, schematically, it kind of they do what they like to do. Nate Tice called it a money play offense. Ole Miss is there to win football games. They're not there to develop these prospects into these clean-cut NFL prospects. They're there to win football games. They're there to get money. They're there to get the best players, right? Which they should. Heavy play action, RPO offense, almost 50% of his attempts. Receivers, we all know they don't really nearly run the full route tree. I think Kiffin does like making things relatively simple for the QBs, which, as we know in the NFL, it's anything but simple. So talk to me about that offense. Doesn't even have to be just like X's and O's and the type of routes that receivers run and things like that, but maybe some things that fans can't see while watching Lane Kiffin's offense, but like how Jaxson Dart learned the offense or how they would install it and things like that.
Yeah, I think you said it kind of best to kind of sum it all up, I would think, just as far as, Lane wants to put his quarterback in the best situation possible, and that's going to be making their lives as easy as possible because that's what's going to help you win games, right? And yeah, maybe that development doesn't necessarily translate all the way to the NFL. We've seen a couple guys like Matt Corral not really pan out. He'll have another guy in Austin Simmons this year, but snap count, that's something else Gruden kind of talked about. Kind of really interesting. I mean, SEC stadiums are loud. Sure, you're going to get that in the NFL at some places. I mean, these environments, each Saturday are different. And, now that I think about it, how can you clap? I don't know. I don't know how much more that is than a voice with other 100,000 fans clapping. But terminology, too, I think that's going to be an adjustment for Jaxson because I don't think these play calls are necessarily as long. He'll call it a lazy narrative. If you haven't heard that, that's what Jaxson says about people kind of criticizing the Ole Miss offense a little bit. But and I guess that maybe could be a little bit true because they did implement Joe Judge or whatever. But you hear a guy like Jordan Watkins. He was kind of honest the other day and said, yeah, the offense is going to be the wide receiver for Ole Miss, one of Jackson's targets, said it was going to be a big adjustment. So yeah, I think, like you said, life is anything but simple as an NFL quarterback. So it's going to be a big adjustment for him. I think he's ready to handle it. Again, if he was getting thrusted into the fire, this might be a different 100%. Conversation. But
all right, before we keep talking with Tyler about Jaxson Dart, I got to talk to you about SeatGeek. The MLB season is underway, and the NBA and NHL playoffs have started. And with SeatGeek, the MLB's official ticket marketplace, your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. No more waiting for some random person to email you your tickets. You're going to get them instantly fulfilled in your account. No anxiety. And with our partners at SeatGeek, you can now get 10% off any tickets with code GIANTS2025. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app in the world. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports festivals, and more. Right now, you can get tickets to baseball games, NBA, and NHL, not to mention tons of concerts and events, including the NASCAR race in Charlotte Motor Speedway. I will be there. I got my tickets via SeatGeek, and you know we came through for you guys. You can use code GIANTS2025 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code GIANTS2025. Let's keep talking about Jaxson Dart.
It's not that conversation yet.
Right. And I think the main thing with Dart is, the word cleanliness. Like, I think Dart would thrive with a clean environment. But even when things weren't clean and there's pressure in his face, it's inconsistent where you would see some of these awesome throws under pressure, but then there's other throws and the non-highlight plays, and it's like, damn, man, I feel like with your arm talent and some of the traits, there's plays to be had there. So Dart is a guy, and I think Kiffin did a very good job of making things clean for Jaxson Dart, and that's where you're able to see some of the traits show out, whether it's mobility on the ground, whether it's extending plays, whether it's even throwing the ball when he's going to his left, whether it is the big arm, whether it is giving his receivers an opportunity to make a play, because even though there are times where the ball dies when it's going deep in the air 50 yards down the field, but Dart's also said that I'd rather underthrow my guy and give him an opportunity to make a play. You can also get a penalty that way, versus an overthrow is just an incompletion and it's a bad play. So going from a environment that he thrived off of cleanliness at Ole Miss to the NFL where things are going to be anything but clean, I think is going to be the biggest transition for Jaxson Dart, and that's insert Brian Dable. It's insert hopefully not playing for the majority of your first year. I can see if things get bad if things get really bad for the Giants, that he's going in mid-December, late December, just to see what they have, and that could maybe be a last-ditch effort for Brian Daboll to save his job if things get that bad. But I love the buffer of Russ and Jameis in front of Jaxson Dart, because I do think there are things that he's going to have to transition to as time goes on. So
Absolutely. And one other little thing I want to touch on about the offense. It feels like if his first read wasn't there sometimes, he's either
eyes go down.
Eyes go down, he's going to take off. And I think a lot of that product, though, is kind of the offensive line. I will say he never had a stellar offensive line at best. It was probably slightly above average in SEC, like upper tier standards. But and another thing about his personality, this guy gave his offensive line way too much credit at times when they probably didn't deserve it. And I think that's just kind of, you see a lot of opposites from him and Sanders, I think. So, and as a Giants fan, yeah, I'm glad the Giants kind of are taking a gamble on what they believe to be a franchise guy, on the guy that has a little bit more of positive traits off the field, like coachable, good teammate,
not going to throw your teammates under the bus, which that was a big thing with Sanders. I don't want this to just be a shit on Shooter Sanders thing, but that was like a big thing where my biggest and I'm not an avid college football watcher during the season, just because there's you work on football Monday through Friday. I kind of want a day before to myself before Sundays roll around, and then it's football all day, and then it'll be football all week next week, the following week.
Right. That's what you got me here for, right?
That's right. But Shador, I'm a Nebraska guy, so I watched the Nebraska and Colorado game. My Cornhuskers kicked the shit out of Colorado, and then after the game, it's Shador Sanders throwing the offensive lineman under the bus, and that is that cannot work here.
No.
That can maybe work in Arizona. That can maybe work in Houston. It can maybe work in Tennessee. That will not fly here. No. That will not. You will either get. I think you'll get fans that, what are you doing? Even if the offensive line's horrible, I think you'll get a portion of the fan base that'll be like, what the fuck are you doing? Or you'll also get a portion of the fan base saying, yeah, tell them, and then it'll turn into a fight amongst the fan base. So I love that. And then even, you talked about the offensive line. Our guy Monty, he tweeted out QB owned pressure percentage from the 2025 draft. And out of all basically the top 9 guys that were taken, or even the top 10, it was Will Howard with 11.5%, and then Jaxson Dart with 12.3% of the lowest QB owned pressure rate. And even if you go back to last year, JJ McCarthy was best at 13.4 out of all of those other guys. So Jaxson Dart, I like a guy that can move and can improvise to an extent. I like that he has an owned pressure rate that is still relatively low. Oh, yeah, and this is an Ole Miss offense that is pushing the ball down the field, which typically when you push the ball down the field, maybe you're holding onto the ball for a little bit longer. You hold onto the ball for a little bit longer. Maybe you take some more pressures and sacks. So I do know that is there's a critique with Dart, Dart like we talked about, where his first read isn't there, his eyes go down, and then he runs, where I think he had 100 rushing attempts this year, and I think 55% were off of scrambles, and he had a ton of scrambles. His scramble numbers were up there with Riley Leonard, Jalen Milroe, and Jaxson Dart would all alternate rushing stats this year out of the QBs for this class. So again, that's positives, but also some negatives that are kind of associated with it too. But I love that he's sitting. I mean, I'm going to say this over and over again. I think we both love that he's sitting for the year, or hopefully for the majority of the year, and I think that is going to be the thing that will give him the best and biggest chance to actually develop into a franchise quarterback instead of being thrown into the fire.
100%. And okay, what about this scenario though? What if Wilson has a Pro Bowl year? What do you think they do there and make the playoffs?
Pro Bowl year is
that's too optimistic, but
I mean that would be at least 30 touchdowns and 4,000 yards. If Wilson has a Pro Bowl year, then it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and that's why you trade back in to take him at 25 and not 34 because you have the 5th-year option, right?
Yeah.
So 2 years behind the bench, really. not that bad.
And then that makes that third round pick that we gave up, it makes me feel a lot better since that's a third round pick that's in the back end of the third round instead of the front end of the third round,
Exactly.
like it was this year. So you just brought up a scenario that I refuse to explore until it actually happens. But that would be pretty cool. Speaking of good quarterbacks and quarterbacks that have good seasons, Jaxson Dart has compared himself to, lo and behold, Josh Allen before. And we know Brian Dable likes Josh Allen. So talk to me about, how he's kind of done that as the years have gone on, and, what that vision maybe looks like for him.
Yeah, I think he's envisioned himself kind of being this modern style quarterback, which, yeah, he is. He's a dual threat. You need to be mobile in this league nowadays. You don't see, the Mahomes, the Cam Ward comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Mobile, making plays, and improvising is the big word there. But yeah, bigger guy that's not afraid to try to truck some guys, at least in the SEC. A lot of mileage. I mean, you bring up his attempts. Yeah, he's had over 100 rushing attempts, at least. I don't know if they're counting sacks in that, but at least 100 in all three of the Ole Miss years. So, he likes to run the ball. He likes to push down the field. I think. Especially after the 23 season, you'd hear him say Josh Allen. Now he says Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and there's one other quarterback I'm missing. He throws in that trio. But, yeah, you can tell. And, yeah, Jalen Hurts is a guy that's mobile and that modern style. So
Powerful.
I think that, powerful. Yeah, a lot of leg strength there. And I think that is something, I guess, that is appealing to Dable, maybe to recreate the next Josh Allen because, raw off the college footage kind of has the tape that proves it. You see a hurdle against an LSU defender. But, I think Gruden kind of, again, a lot of goes back to the Gruden thing because I think he called out a lot of good stuff. NFL coach is going to spot that out. Probably took a lot of hits that he really didn't need to. And that Ole Miss, they train him, extra 2. And you heard him say it on the podcast, fall forward for 2 or whatever. He wants the extra 2 yards. In the NFL, you're not going to maybe have a franchise quarterback long tenure if you take those hits. So hopefully he kind of slides more. I know Allen himself, not really a slider, more of a trucker, hurdler, that kind of thing. So
I think I remember the Athletic did a podcast series on Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck was always big into I don't feel like I'm into the game unless I get fucking smacked. That's honestly how Dart plays sometimes. Gruden was yelling, dude, just go down. You got to protect yourself for 10, 15 years if you want to be the guy. And even I think we're going to be saying the same thing if as fans when we're watching him out there. Dude, you got to, Daniel Jones broke his neck twice, doing this shit. Well, one was Josh Azudu, and then he cried after the Buffalo game. Anyway, but.
How about Eli?
At the same time, that is going to get your teammates fired up. If you run over, Daniel Jones runs over Grady Jarrett for a 2-point conversion against the Falcons. It's hell yeah, man. That's gonna fire guys up. But also you can't get hurt.
Exactly. And who's really good at that? Eli Manning. A lot of, the comparisons.
Well, Eli wasn't running anybody over in the middle of the field.
He was tripping over his own feet in the back of the pocket, right?
But standing in the pocket, that was Eli's, when Eli was Eli. And watch, I'm interrupting you. And this is, go down a rabbit hole this summer. And we talk about extending from within the pocket. There are certain quarterbacks that like Lamar and Mahomes and Allen that extend from outside the pocket, and that's how they can keep a play alive. The modern day quarterbacks that do that really well within the pocket. I think Stafford does it well. I think Burrow is the best at it within the pocket. Watch Eli Manning's 2011 and just watch how he extends plays from within the pocket and his footwork and navigating it. And that O-line was horrible in 2011. But neither here nor there. I digress. Jaxson Dart's a psychopath.
Yeah, that's right. And I think he is kind of that style. Doesn't really feel like he's in the game until he takes a big hit or delivers a big hit for that matter.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Who's going to be the coach or the teammate that's going to slap him up? It's like that, that defensive lineman from the Jaguars, that NFL Films clip that just goes,
that clip.
Come on, man, I need more. I know you got more. Oh, that. All right, who's going to be? Let's think of it right now. Who's going to be the guy? Darius Slayton's too nice. Malik Neighbors is I got my own shit to do.
I'd say maybe Jameis, but he might be in that too nice category.
No, he's too nice. Russ, same thing, too nice. All right, either Jermaine Illuminor because he's just a really good teammate. John Michael Schmitz.
Oh,
It's
I
like,
like
all
that
right,
one.
you're the center. You got to get me going. Or Nacho. Nacho's going to be the guy to slap him. And I think we need to bring this to the coaching staff. Like, listen, you have to hit Jaxson Dart that won't hurt him before he actually gets in. And that's going to be a way to get him ready.
I'm going to take a Luminor on that, just based on what I see him post on Twitter and things like that.
Yeah. He's a good teammate. He'll do anything for the team.
Yeah.
Anything for the team. All right, yeah, we talked about Josh. We talked about how Jaxson Dart's a crazy person, and that was one of the last questions I have. Do you have anything else? Like, sell me on Jaxson Dart. How about this? Will Jaxson Dart be a franchise quarterback for the New York Football Giants?
In due time, I do believe so. I think his relationship, just kind of a lot of weird connections in there. Like, I know Eli, see the thing about Eli trying to buy some stake in the Giants, right?
10%.
10%. There you go.
I don't know if that's real or fake, but I saw 10%. I saw 10% somewhere, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think Manning's kind of been a guy in Jaxson Dart's corner. You see him say he's used him as a resource, and he really has. And I think, there's no other guy I'd kind of want my Giants quarterback to look up to as a franchise guy than him. And then you throw in Wilson in front of him for, I think we're thinking it's going to be a year, could be two, I guess, in a best case scenario for the Giants at least. But I think he does have all the intangibles you look, and like you said, in quarterbacks, and I think with these evals, they look for a lot of things off the field too. A lot of those traits, how can you handle being criticized, constructive criticism, those kind of things. And, come into a meeting unprepared, okay, that's okay, but are you willing to be coachable in that moment?
Yeah.
And I think he absolutely is. And I think there's not a lot of pressure on him this year, which is great, because I think we all agree he's got a lot to work on, right, in a pro style. So, I mean, I think he's got the moxie, word that people use a lot, maybe that Daniel Jones didn't have. I think not another kind of opposite, not a quiet guy, on the field fiery, and a guy that I think his teammates are willing to play harder for. And I think a guy that improved his teammates, kind of like a point guard, the last two falls, I'd say, kind of made players around him better.
Yeah.
So if he can actually learn, and no doubt, I think he's going to be a sponge. I think he's used that word. I think he's going to be a sponge towards Russell Wilson, Brian Dable, hopefully Jameis Winston too. I would think he could teach him something, delivering him from the pick sixes, right? But no, seriously, I think he could develop. Hopefully he's not thrown into hopefully the situation in New Jersey is a little more stable than it has been the last season or two. So if he has to come in early, I think that's going to be a concern. Obviously, they're going to prevent that. They're let Jameis take the bullet for however long that may be, if things either injury or not playing up to standard. But I do think he's a guy that could eventually develop. And fun little nugget here, just kind of on the whole Jaxson thing. So I'm not sure. I didn't really see any Giants beat reporter report this, and I was kind of a little bit surprised. Maybe they kept it down low, but I saw Joe Shane and three other staff members. I think one of them, the only other one name I would know is Brandon Brown, the shorter guy who's on Hard Knocks.
Was there somebody that looked like John Mara? Because that was Tim McDonald.
Oh, there might have been. I can't even remember. I just remember those two, probably because of Hard Knocks. How embarrassing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shane and Brandon Brown were there, and another staffer. And they came a day after the Thanksgiving game, Dallas Giants. They came to watch Ole Miss, Mississippi State. And that game, Jaxson, nothing special, 143 yards. Didn't need that much to pass Eli that day. Did it. I think that is an example of, maybe it speaks to his grittiness, because that's kind of what it was. Didn't make the flashy plays, made the winning plays, though. And I briefly talked to Shane. Just my rooting interest, who you here for and things like that, quarterback. Because by that point, Jones was already on the way out. And he said, no, there's a ton of positions we're looking at. And sure enough, they added one of Jaxson Dart's targets and Antoine Juice Wells. So that's going to be interesting.
That's who they were looking at. That's who Joe Shane had no interest in Jaxson Dart. at Thanksgiving when his team is falling apart and knowing that they need a quarterback. They were there for Juice Wells.
Right. I mean, I honestly assumed
Lying.
maybe, yeah, no, of course. I assumed maybe they were there for defense. I didn't actually think at that point, like maybe they were considering Dart in the first round, but, he nailed the pre-draft process. And again, another kind of just difference with him and Sanders. He went through the Gator Bowl, he did the Senior Bowl, did the Combine, Pro Day, everything. And just on the way he kind of carries himself and talks, no doubt, I'm sure those interviews went great.
Yeah. All right, man. Plug yourself. Tell us where we could find you.
Yeah, so down in Oxford, Mississippi, and you can find me covering Ole Miss football, baseball on Inside the Rebels. That'd be rebs247.com, or you can follow me on X, Tyler Komis, just my name. And if you're really trying to continue to hear me yap, run this podcast called The Rebel Rundown that you'll see in the link in my bio on X. So feel free to click and tune in. We did talk a little bit about Dart and my feelings on that as a Ole Miss Giants guy, but kind of gave you more in-depth here, I hope. So, yeah.
Love it, man. Thank you, Tyler, and I'll see you at MetLife sometime this year, man.
Absolutely. I'll see you then, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, I want to thank Tyler Komis for coming on the show. Make sure you give him a follow. Tell him thank you for coming on. And I will see you next week. The plan is I'm going to invite somebody else on. We're going to dive into the Giants draft class, maybe dive into some of the Giants UDFAs. I will see you next week. Let's go Giants. 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 Bop, 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 bop.